In the frozen heart of a frontier kingdom, a forgotten kitchen servant stands accused of the impossible, stealing the sacred crown. The Alpha King demands her head. The court erupts in mockery. No one believes the truth she alone witnessed. But tonight, one impossible choice will shatter everything they thought they knew about power, loyalty, and the woman they dismissed as nothing. Stay until the end to see how she rewrites her fate. And if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments and hit that like button. This is a story you won't forget. The wind screaming through Thornvale Keep didn't sound like wind at all. It sounded like something dying. Leora Vance had heard that sound 1,000 nights, huddled in the servants' quarters beneath the great hall, where the stone walls sweated ice and the blankets were thin as lies. Tonight was worse. Tonight the cold had teeth, and it was hungry. She pressed her palms against the kitchen hearth, trying to steal warmth from embers that had given up hours ago. Her fingers were swollen, cracked at the knuckles, perpetually stained with lye and grease. 43 years old, 26 of them spent in this kitchen. Invisible, dispensable. A shadow that scrubbed pots and carved turnips and said, "Yes, ma'am," and "Right away, sir," until the words lost all meaning. Nobody looked at Leora Vance. Not really. Not ever. Which made it all the more ridiculous that they were looking at her now. "Bring her forward!" The voice cracked through the great hall like a whip, and the guard's hands clamped down on her shoulders. She stumbled, her worn boots catching on the uneven flagstones as they shoved her toward the dais. The hall was a cathedral of judgment, vaulted ceilings lost in shadow, torches guttering in iron sconces, and everywhere, faces. Nobles in their furs and jewels, soldiers in polished armor, servants pressed against the walls, their eyes wide and gleaming, all of them staring at her. At the center of it all sat Kyle Draven, Alpha King of the Northern Reach, first of his line, 29 years old and carved from winter itself, sharp jaw, dark hair pulled back severe, eyes the color of steel in moonlight. He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched her approach with the stillness of a wolf deciding whether you were prey or threat. Leora had seen him before, of course. Everyone had. He walked the halls sometimes, spoke to his commanders in clipped, measured tones, reviewed reports in the library while she scrubbed the floors 3 feet away. But she'd never been seen by him. Never been close enough to feel the weight of his attention pressing down like a physical thing. She felt it now. The guards forced her to her knees. The stone bit through her threadbare skirt, cold as a blade. Her hands were bound behind her back, rough hemp that scraped her wrists raw. She kept her head down, heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. "Leora Vance." Kale's voice was low, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something sharp. "Kitchen servant. 3rd shift, 43 years of age, unmarried, no family, no status." Each word landed like a stone in still water. "You stand accused," he continued, "of theft of the sacred crown of Thornvale. Do you understand the gravity of this charge?" She understood. She understood that no one cared whether she'd actually done it. She understood that someone needed to die tonight, and she was convenient. "I understand, Your Majesty," she said quietly. A ripple of laughter rolled through the hall. Not loud, not cruel exactly, just dismissive. The kind of laughter you give a dog that's learned a trick. "Speak up, woman," Lord Karras called from the gallery, his jowls quivering with indignation. "We can barely hear your mumbling." More laughter, sharper this time. Leora lifted her head. The hall went very still. She looked directly at Kale Draven, and for just a moment, something flickered in those cold eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition of something he hadn't expected to find. "I said I understand, Your Majesty." Her voice was stronger now. Not loud, but steady. "I understand what I'm accused of, and I understand that you've already decided I'm guilty." The silence that followed was absolute. Kyle leaned forward slightly. "You think I've condemned you without evidence?" I think," Leora said carefully, "that no one in this hall believes a kitchen servant capable of stealing anything more valuable than table scraps. And yet here I am, accused of taking the most sacred object in the kingdom. So either I'm guilty or I'm useful. Either way, I'm already dead." Someone gasped. She didn't look to see who. Kyle's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened on the arm of his chair, just a fraction, just enough to make the wood creak. Bold words from a woman on her knees. The only position I've ever known, Your Majesty. Another murmur rippled through the crowd. This one wasn't laughter. This one was uneasy, uncertain, like they weren't sure whether to be entertained or offended. Enough of this circus, Lord Varick Thorn said, stepping forward from the shadows at the side of the dais. He was tall, elegant, draped in expensive furs that made him look like a predator playing at civility. His smile was all teeth. The woman is obviously lying to save her miserable skin. She was found near the vault. She has no alibi. No one will vouch for her. Execute her and be done with it. Heads nodded. Murmurs of agreement. Cale didn't move. His gaze stayed locked on Leora, searching for something, testing. "Were you near the vault tonight?" he asked. "Yes," Leora said. "Why?" She hesitated, not because she didn't have an answer, because the answer would sound insane. "I was delivering wine to the East Wing," she said slowly. "I heard voices, an argument. I stopped because—" She swallowed. "Because one of the voices belonged to Lord Thorn." The hall erupted. Varick's face went red. "How dare you!" "Silence!" Kyle's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He rose from his chair, and the room snapped to attention. He descended the dais steps, slow and deliberate, until he stood directly in front of Leora. Up close, he was overwhelming. Not just his size, though he was tall, broad-shouldered, built like something meant to survive, but his presence, the sheer concentrated force of him. "You're accusing Lord Thorn," Kyle said softly, "of attempting to steal the crown." "I'm not accusing him of attempting," Leora said. "I'm accusing him of succeeding." Varick barked a laugh. "This is absurd. Your Majesty, the woman is delusional." "Then why?" Leora interrupted, her voice rising for the first time. "Did I see you and two others carrying a chest from the vault? Why did I hear you say, 'Once we're across the border, the king will have no claim'? And why—" She locked eyes with Varick, and there was no fear in her now, only cold, sharp fury. "Why did you turn around and see me standing there?" The hall went silent again. Different this time. Heavier. Varick's smile faltered. "She's lying, obviously. If she's lying," Cale said quietly, "then it should be simple to prove. Open the vault." "Your Majesty, that's not necessary." "Open the vault." Varick's jaw clenched. His eyes darted to the guards, to the nobles, searching for support, finding none. "Of course," he said finally, smoothly, "but when it's proven that the crown is still there, I expect this woman's execution to be immediate and public." Cale didn't answer. He turned to the captain of the guard. "Send a detail to the vault. Bring me a full inventory." The captain saluted and strode from the hall, taking 6 men with him. The wait was excruciating. Leora stayed on her knees, her legs going numb, her wrists burning. She didn't look at Varick, didn't look at the crowd. She looked at the floor and tried to remember how to breathe. "I'm going to die," she thought distantly. "Even if I'm right, I'm going to die. Because people like me don't accuse people like him and live." But she'd already decided that didn't matter. She'd spent her whole life being nothing. At least tonight, for one moment, she'd been something. The captain returned. His face was ashen. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice tight. "The crown is gone." Chaos. Nobles shouting, guards moving, servants pressing forward to see. Cale held up one hand and the noise died instantly. "Gone," he repeated. "Yes, Your Majesty. The vault was sealed, but the interior lock was forced. The crown, along with several documents, are missing." Cale turned slowly to face Varick. "Lord Thorn," he said, his voice soft as frost. "Do you have anything to say?" Varick's face had gone pale, but his smile never wavered. "Clearly there's been a theft, Your Majesty. But to suggest that I, a loyal lord who has served your family for 2 generations, would commit such a crime based on the word of a servant," he spread his hands, "it's beneath consideration." "Then you won't mind," Kyle said, "if we search your chambers." Varick's smile froze. "Your Majesty, this is—" "Search them." Cale's tone left no room for argument. "Now." The guards moved before Varick could protest further. He stood rigid, fury and fear warring in his eyes, as the captain personally led the search party from the hall. Leora watched it all in a daze. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Kings didn't listen to servants. They didn't challenge nobles on the word of a nobody. Kyle crouched in front of her. She flinched, startled, and found herself staring directly into those steel-gray eyes. "Where is it?" he asked quietly. "Where is what?" "The crown. You took it." "I know you did." Her breath caught. The timeline doesn't work," Kael continued, his voice so low only she could hear. "Varric and his men left the vault 20 minutes before you were found. If they'd taken the crown, you wouldn't have been near the vault at all. But you were there. You were found inside with soot on your hands and your hair smelling like smoke. You burned something, and then you stayed waiting to be caught, so you could accuse Varric publicly." Leora stared at him. Her heart was a drum. Her thoughts were white noise. "Why?" Kael asked. "Because no one would believe me," she whispered. "If I just told you, you'd call me a liar and execute me anyway. But this," she swallowed, "this way you'd have to investigate. You'd have to look at him. And maybe you'd find proof." "Proof of what?" "That Varric Thorn is a traitor. That he's been planning this for months. That the crown was never meant to stay in Thornvale." Kael studied her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. It was a small, sharp thing, gone as quickly as it appeared. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met," he said, "or the most foolish." "Both, probably," Leora admitted. He stood, pulling her up with him. The guards rushed forward to restrain her, but Kael waved them back. "Leave her." "Your Majesty," I said, "leave her." The captain returned then, 2 guards with him, carrying a wooden chest. They set it at Kael's feet and opened it. Inside were documents, letters, maps, and a heavy signet ring engraved with the crest of House Thorn. Kael picked up one of the letters, scanned it, and his expression went cold as the winter night outside. "Lord Varric Thorn," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "you are under arrest for treason, conspiracy, and attempted theft of the crown. You will be held in the tower until trial." Varric lunged. It was fast. Faster than Leora expected from a man his age, but Kael was faster. He sidestepped, grabbed Varric's wrist, and twisted hard. The Lord cried out, collapsing to his knees as guards swarmed him. "Take him," Kael ordered. They dragged Varric away, his protests echoing down the corridor. The hall was silent, stunned. Kael turned back to Leora. "The crown," he said again. "Where is it?" She hesitated. Then slowly she reached into the folds of her skirt, hidden beneath the layers of patched fabric and rough wool, and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it. The crown of Thornvale gleamed in the torchlight, ancient gold and frost-white diamonds, a symbol of power older than the kingdom itself. She held it out to him. "I didn't steal it," she said quietly. "I saved it." Kael took the crown from her hands, his fingers brushing hers for just a moment. He stared at it, then at her, and something shifted in his expression, something unreadable. "You risked your life," he said, "for a piece of metal and stone." "No," Leora said. "I risked my life for the truth." The hall was silent, waiting. Kael lifted the crown and placed it back on the pedestal the guards brought forward. Then he turned to face the assembled nobles, the soldiers, the servants still pressed against the walls. "Leora Vance," he said, his voice ringing clear, "has done this kingdom a service. She uncovered a traitor, she protected the crown, and she stood before this court and spoke truth, knowing it would likely mean her death." He paused, letting the words settle. "That," he said, "is more than most of you have ever done." The nobles shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. "Unbind her," Kael ordered. The guards hesitated, then moved forward, cutting the ropes at her wrists. Leora gasped as blood rushed back into her hands, the pain sharp and immediate. Kael offered her his hand. She stared at it, at him, at the impossible, incomprehensible thing happening. "Stand up," he said gently. She took his hand. His grip was warm, solid, real. He pulled her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. The hall watched in stunned silence. "You're free," Kael said. "You're cleared of all charges, and—" He paused, something almost like hesitation crossing his face. "You have my gratitude." Leora didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process the fact that she was still alive, still standing, still here. "Thank you," she managed, her voice hoarse. Cale nodded once. Then he turned to address the hall, his hand still holding hers, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed. "Let this be a lesson," he said coldly. "Treachery wears many faces. Loyalty is not a matter of title or bloodline. It is earned through action, through sacrifice, through courage." His gaze swept the room, sharp as a blade. "Dismissed." The nobles filed out slowly, murmuring among themselves. The servants vanished like smoke. The guards remained at their posts, watchful and tense. And Lyora Vance stood beside the Alpha King, her heart still racing, her hands still shaking, trying to understand how the worst night of her life had become something else entirely. Something impossible. Something that felt for the first time in 43 years like hope. The problem with being noticed, Lyora discovered, was that you couldn't go back to being invisible. 3 days after the trial, she still felt the weight of every stare. Servants whispered when she passed in the corridors. Guards tracked her movements with suspicious eyes. The nobles who remained at court, those not implicated in Varric's conspiracy, regarded her with barely concealed contempt, as if her survival was a personal insult. She'd been given new quarters. Not in the servants' wing, but in the East Tower. A small room with actual windows, a bed that didn't sag, and a door that locked from the inside. It felt like a cage made of kindness. She didn't sleep much. When she did, she dreamed of the vault, of Varric's face when he'd seen her in the shadows, of the moment she'd made the choice to take the crown herself. In the dreams, Kael didn't believe her. In the dreams, she died on her knees while the court laughed. She'd wake gasping, her hands clutching at blankets that were too soft, too clean, too wrong. On the 4th morning, a knock came at her door. She opened it to find Captain Rendall, the king's head of guard. He was a compact man, all muscle and scars, with eyes that missed nothing. "His Majesty requests your presence," Rendall said. Not unkindly, but not warmly either. "Council meeting? Main hall. Now." Lyora's stomach dropped. I don't belong in a council meeting." "King's orders." Rendall's expression didn't change. "You can argue with him if you like. I wouldn't recommend it." She followed him through the keep, acutely aware of how wrong she looked. Still wearing the plain dress they'd given her hair pulled back in a servant's braid, her hands rough and scarred. She didn't belong anywhere near the council chamber. The hall was already full when they arrived. Long table, high-backed chairs, maps spread across every surface. Lords and military commanders stood in clusters, their conversation stopping dead when she entered. Kael stood at the head of the table, studying a map of the northern territories. He glanced up as she approached, his expression unreadable. "Lyora Vance," he said. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't realize I had a choice, Your Majesty." A few of the lords exchanged looks. One of them, Lord Dennick, she thought, though she'd never been important enough to learn their names properly, let out a derisive snort. "Your Majesty," Dennick said, his tone dripping false courtesy, "with all respect, why is a kitchen servant present at a military council?" Kael didn't look at him. "Because I invited her." "But surely—" "Are you questioning my judgment, Lord Dennick?" The room went very quiet. Dennick's face reddened. "Of course not, Your Majesty. I merely thought—" "Then sit down." Dennick sat. The others followed suit, arranging themselves around the table. Lyora stood near the door, uncertain, until Kael gestured to an empty chair beside him. "Here." Every eye in the room locked on her. She moved to the chair slowly, feeling like she was walking through deep water. Sat down. The wood was hard beneath her, the table smooth and polished, covered in documents she couldn't read. Kael leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. "Varric Thorn has been interrogated," he said without preamble. "He's confessed to coordinating with external forces to destabilize the kingdom. The crown was to be smuggled across the southern border and used as leverage to fragment our alliances." Murmurs around the table. Shocked, angry, afraid. "He wasn't working alone," Kael continued. "We've identified 3 other nobles involved in the conspiracy. All are now in custody, but the external forces he mentioned—" He paused. "Those remain unaccounted for. We don't know who they are, where they're based, or what their ultimate goal is." "Then we fortify the borders," Lord Heron said, an older man with a voice like gravel. "Double the patrols, lock down trade routes, wait them out." "That won't work," Lyora said. The words were out before she could stop them. Every head swiveled toward her. "Excuse me?" Heron's tone was ice. Lyora's heart hammered. She shouldn't have spoken. She had no right, no authority, no... Kale's hand moved slightly on the table, a subtle gesture that somehow felt like permission. She swallowed hard. If they wanted to invade, they'd have done it already. They don't want the kingdom. They want chaos. Varric's plan wasn't about stealing the crown for them. It was about making us tear ourselves apart looking for it. And how, Dennick sneered, would a servant know anything about military strategy? I don't, Leora said quietly, but I know people. I've spent my whole life watching them, listening, being ignored while they talked like I wasn't there. You learn things that way. You see patterns. Patterns, Heron repeated flatly. Varric wasn't careful, Leora said, gaining confidence despite the hostile stares. He talked about the plan in hallways and kitchens, anywhere he thought servants didn't matter. He mentioned border crossings, but never specific ones. He talked about when the time comes, but never gave dates. Because it didn't matter when. The point was to create the possibility of invasion, to make you afraid, to make you suspicious of each other. She looked around the table, meeting their eyes one by one. If you lock down the borders now, she said, you'll strangle your own economy. Trade will collapse. People will starve. And whoever is behind this will just wait and watch while you destroy yourselves from within. The silence was absolute. Kale was staring at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Go on, he said softly. They're not out there, Leora said. They're already here. Varric's partners, the ones you arrested, they're not the only ones. There are more. People who've been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment. The crown was just the trigger. That's absurd, Dennick sputtered. You're suggesting we have traitors throughout the court. I'm not suggesting, Leora said. I'm telling you, because I've seen them. I've served them meals, cleaned their chambers, listened to them complain about King Kale's policies when they thought no one important was listening. Heron leaned forward, his expression skeptical but intent. Names. I don't have names, Leora admitted. Not the way you mean, but I can tell you who's been meeting in secret, who's suddenly richer than their land should allow, who hires new staff from outside the kingdom and pays them 3 times the normal wage. This is ridiculous, Dennick said. Your Majesty, you cannot seriously be considering Lord Dennick. Kale's voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. One more interruption, and you'll be dismissed, permanently. Dennick's mouth snapped shut. Kale turned back to Leora. You're proposing we investigate the court, our own people. I'm proposing you let me investigate, Leora said. The room exploded. Lord shouting, chairs scraping, voices overlapping in outrage and disbelief. Leora sat frozen, wondering if she'd just signed her own death warrant. Kale let them vent for exactly 10 seconds. Then he stood, and the silence was immediate. Explain, he said to Leora. She forced herself to breathe. They don't see me. They never have. I could go back to the kitchens, to the servants' quarters, and no one would question it. I could listen, watch, report back. You can't do that. You're the king. Your guards can't do it. Everyone knows their faces. But me? She shook her head. I'm nobody. I always have been. That's my advantage. It's suicide, Captain Rendall said bluntly. You're known now. The trial was public. Half the court saw you stand beside His Majesty. They won't trust you. They don't have to trust me, Leora said. They just have to dismiss me. And they will, because deep down, they still think I'm nothing. A servant who got lucky. One public moment doesn't change 43 years of invisibility. Kale was studying her with that unnerving intensity again. You'd be in constant danger. If they suspect you're working for me, then I'll die, Leora said simply. But at least I'll die doing something that matters. The words hung in the air. Heron cleared his throat. Your Majesty, even if we agreed to this insanity, which I don't, how would she report back? How would we know what she learns? I'll handle that, Kyle said, his eyes never leaving Leora's. The question is whether she's willing. I already said I am. I heard what you said. I'm asking if you understand what you're volunteering for. This isn't a single act of courage. This is sustained deception, constant fear, and if you're caught, his jaw tightened. I won't be able to protect you. Not publicly, not without exposing the operation. I understand. Do you? His voice dropped lower. Because once you agree, there's no backing out. You'll be alone, completely. Leora met his gaze steadily. Your Majesty, I've been alone my entire life. At least this time it'll be for a reason. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. He turned to the council. Lord Heron, Lord Marvick, Captain Rendall, you'll assist in coordinating this operation. No one else knows. No documentation. Everything verbal. If word leaks... His voice went cold as winter stone. I will personally ensure the source regrets it. Heron looked like he'd bitten into something sour, but he nodded. As you command, Your Majesty. The meeting dissolved after that, lords filing out with tight expressions and whispered conversations. Leora remained seated, her hands trembling in her lap now that the adrenaline was fading. Cale waited until the room was empty except for them. Then he pulled out the chair beside her and sat down, suddenly much closer than protocol would normally allow. You didn't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I did. Why? She looked at him, really looked, and saw something she hadn't expected, uncertainty. Underneath all that power and control, he was just a man trying to hold together a kingdom that was fracturing from within. Because you believed me, she said, when no one else would. When it would have been easier to execute me and move on. You listened, you investigated, you risked your authority for the truth. She paused. I'm not going to waste that. He was silent for a moment. Then carefully, he reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm, gentle, completely at odds with his reputation. If this goes wrong, it won't. Leora, he squeezed her hand. If this goes wrong, I need you to know that I... He stopped, something vulnerable crossing his face before he shuddered it away. I need you to know that you matter. Not because of what you can do for the kingdom, because of who you are. Her throat tightened. I'm nobody. No, he said firmly. You're the bravest person I've ever met. And when this is over... He released her hand, standing abruptly. When this is over, things will be different. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her alone in the council chamber with her racing heart and the impossible weight of what she'd just agreed to. That night, they staged it carefully. A public argument in the Great Hall. Kael, cold and imperious, announcing that Leora Vance had overstepped her position, that her presence at the council was an error in judgment, that she was to return to her previous duties immediately. Leora, playing her part, kept her head down and said nothing. Let them see her humiliation. Let them think she'd risen too high and been cut back down. The nobles ate it up. The servants whispered about it for days. And when she returned to the kitchens, to the stone floors, and the grease, and the endless grinding labor, everyone assumed she'd learned her lesson. No one suspected she was hunting. The first week was hell. Her body, softened by 4 days of decent food and rest, screamed in protest at the return to 14-hour shifts. Her hands cracked open again. Her back ached. But she smiled and scrubbed and said yes, ma'am, and listened. She listened to everything. Cook Marla complaining about the new supply chains, how certain merchants were charging triple for grain that used to be plentiful. Young Thomas bragging about the silver coin a nobleman gave him to deliver a message to the southern district. At midnight, no questions asked. Helena, the head maid, mentioning how Lady Constance had fired half her staff and replaced them with people from across the border. Pieces. Fragments. Nothing definitive, but patterns emerging like stars through clouds. She reported back to Kael once a week, late at night, through a series of careful signals. A specific candle in her window meant she had information. He'd send Captain Rendall, never himself, never anyone who'd draw attention, and she'd whisper her findings in the shadows. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was something. The breakthrough came on the 15th day. She was scrubbing the floor in the west corridor when she heard voices from Lord Dennick's study. The door was slightly ajar, careless, or perhaps they thought the late hour meant privacy. Can't wait much longer, a voice said. Not Dennick, someone else. The king's already suspicious. If we don't move, we move when I say we move, Dennick's voice, sharp with irritation. 1 more month, that's all we need. The shipments will be in place. And when they are what? You keep saying we're almost ready, but nothing. The plan works or we all hang. I'm not rushing this because you're nervous. Footsteps approaching the door. Leora scrambled to her feet, grabbed her bucket, and rushed down the corridor as if she'd finished her work. Her heart hammered so hard she thought she'd be sick. She made it 3 steps before a hand caught her arm. She spun, bucket clattering to the floor. Lord Dennick stood in the hallway, his eyes narrow and cold. "Leora Vance," he said slowly. "Funny meeting you here. So late." "My lord." She dropped into an automatic curtsy, mind racing. "I'm sorry, I was just scrubbing floors?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "At midnight?" "The headmaid assigned me extra duties, my lord, for—" She let her voice drop, adding just the right amount of shame, "for my presumption at the council." His smile widened. "Ah, yes, your little moment of glory. Must be quite the fall, going back to mopping up after your betters." "Yes, my lord." He stepped closer, studying her face. "Tell me something, Leora. When you were in that council meeting, did you actually think you belonged there? Or were you just playing at being important?" Every instinct screamed at her to run, but running would confirm suspicion. "I was a fool, my lord," she said quietly. "The king was kind to listen to me, but I see now that I spoke out of turn. I'm just a servant, that's all I'll ever be." Dennick's eyes searched hers for a long moment. Then, apparently satisfied, he released her arm. "Good. At least you've learned your place." He glanced at the spilled bucket, the water spreading across the floor. "Clean that up. And in the future, finish your work earlier. The nobles don't need to see you scurrying about at all hours." "Yes, my lord. I'm sorry, my lord." He swept past her, his companion following, a man she didn't recognize, wrapped in a traveling cloak that hid his face. She waited until their footsteps faded. Then she sank against the wall, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She'd been careless. Sloppy. If Dennick suspected anything, but he didn't. She'd seen it in his eyes. He saw exactly what he expected to see. A servant. A nobody. A woman who'd briefly forgotten her place and been reminded of it. She cleaned up the water with trembling hands, then returned to her quarters, lit the candle in her window, waited. Captain Rendall arrived within the hour. She told him everything. Dennick's voice, the mention of shipments, the timeline of 1 month. Rendall's expression grew grimmer with every word. "Shipments of what?" he asked. "I don't know, but it's something that needs to be in place before they act." And Dennick mentioned "we all hang," which means multiple conspirators, a coordinated effort. Rendall swore quietly. "This is bigger than we thought." "It's been bigger than we thought from the beginning," Leora said. "Varric wasn't the leader. He was just the face. Someone else is running this." "Did you recognize the other man?" "No, but he had an accent, southern, I think, and his cloak was expensive. Merchant class, maybe, or a minor noble." Rendall nodded slowly. "I'll inform His Majesty. In the meantime," he fixed her with a hard stare, "be more careful. Dennick may have dismissed you tonight, but if he catches you again—" "I know. I'm serious, Leora. The king—" He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "Just be careful." He left through the servants' entrance, disappearing into the night. Leora sat on her bed, exhausted and terrified and exhilarated all at once. They were close. Whatever was coming, they had less than a month to stop it. And she was right in the middle of it all, invisible and essential, exactly where she'd chosen to be. The next 2 weeks were a careful dance. She stayed away from Dennick's wing, focused on other areas of the keep. Watched, listened, reported. More fragments emerged. Lady Constance meeting with merchants at odd hours. Gold-changing hands in back corridors. Servants being offered extra coin to forget what they'd seen. A network. Vast and organized and patient. And then, on the 23rd day, everything shifted. She was carrying linens through the South Tower when she heard someone crying. Soft, muffled sobs from behind a closed door. She should have kept walking, should have minded her own business. But the voice was young, frightened. She knocked gently. "Hello? Are you all right?" The crying stopped. Silence. "I'm not here to hurt you," Leora said. I'm a servant. If you need help—" The door cracked open. A girl stared out at her. 15, maybe 16, with red-rimmed eyes and a bruise darkening her cheek. "Please," the girl whispered. "Please, I need to get out of here." Leora's blood went cold. "What happened? Who did this to you?" I can't say. They'll kill me. They said they'd kill my family if I—" The girl broke down again, sobbing. Leora glanced down the corridor. Empty. She slipped inside the room, closing the door behind her. "Tell me," she said gently. "I'll help you. I promise." The girl looked at her with desperate, disbelieving eyes. "You're just a servant. What can you do?" "More than you think. But I need to know what's happening." The girl hesitated, then, in a broken whisper, "They're bringing people into the keep, through the old service tunnels. At night. I saw them. I was delivering messages for Lady Constance, and I saw—" She shuddered. "They're armed. Soldiers, I think. Dozens of them. They're hiding them in the lower levels, in the storage areas no one uses anymore." The room tilted. An army, inside the keep, waiting. "How long?" Leora asked, her voice barely steady. 3 days. Maybe less. Lady Constance said it had to be before the King's Council meeting with the Border Lords. 3 days. They had 3 days. Leora grabbed the girl's hands. "What's your name?" "Elise." "Elise, listen to me. You're going to stay in this room. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me. I'm going to get help, and I'm going to get you out of here. Do you understand?" Elise nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Please hurry." Leora left the room, her mind racing. She couldn't wait for the nightly signal. Couldn't wait for Rendall. This was too urgent, too immediate. She had to go directly to Kael, but approaching the king's chambers would be noticed, questioned, and if Dennick or Constance were watching, she didn't have a choice. She made her way through the keep, keeping to the servants' passages, her heart in her throat the entire time. Reached the king's wing. The guards at the door looked at her with suspicion. "I need to see His Majesty," she said. "It's urgent." "The king doesn't take meetings with servants. It's about the conspiracy. I have information, critical information." The guards exchanged glances. One of them disappeared inside. Leora waited every second an eternity. If they turned her away, if they didn't believe her. The guard returned. "His Majesty will see you. 5 minutes." She was ushered into Kael's private study. He stood by the window, still dressed despite the late hour, as if he'd been waiting for something. He turned when she entered, and the concern in his eyes made her chest ache. "Leora, what's wrong? They're already here," she said without preamble. "Inside the keep, armed soldiers, hidden in the lower storage areas. They're planning to move in 3 days." His face went very still. "You're certain?" "A girl saw them, a servant working for Lady Constance. She's terrified. They threatened her family." Kael crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbing her shoulders. "Did anyone see you come here?" "The guards at your door, that's all." "We need to move, now!" He released her, striding to the door and shouting for Rendall. The captain appeared within seconds, and Kael explained in rapid, clipped sentences. Rendall's expression grew darker with every word. "We'll need to sweep the lower levels," Rendall said, quietly. "If they realize we know, they'll move early," Kael finished. "We do this tonight. Assemble your most trusted men. No one else. We can't risk word getting out." Rendall saluted and vanished. Kael turned back to Leora. His hands found hers, gripping tight. "You need to leave. Get out of the keep, tonight." "No." "Leora, I'm not leaving. That girl, Elise, she's still here. And if this goes wrong, if they realize what we're doing, they'll go after anyone who might have talked. I'm not abandoning her." "Then I'll send guards. You need every guard you have for the sweep. I'll get her out myself. Through the servant passages, no one will notice." He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers for just a moment. A gesture so intimate, so unguarded, that it stole her breath. "Be careful," he whispered. "You too." He released her, and she slipped back into the corridors, moving fast now, no longer caring about stealth. Speed was everything. She reached Elise's room, knocked. "It's me. We're leaving, now." The door opened immediately. Elise's face was pale, terrified. "What's happening?" "The king knows. He's moving against them tonight, but we need to get you somewhere safe first." They moved through the servant passages, Leora leading, Elise stumbling behind. The keep was alive with tension now, footsteps echoing in distant corridors, shouted orders, the metallic ring of weapons being drawn. It had started. They were halfway to the exit when a figure stepped into their path. Lord Dennick, smiling. "Going somewhere, Leora?" he asked pleasantly. Then his eyes shifted to Elise and his smile vanished. You stupid girl, you talked. Elise whimpered. Dennick drew a knife. Leora stepped in front of the girl, her hands raised. Lord Dennick, the king knows. It's over. Put down the weapon. Over? He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. It's just beginning. You think Kyle can stop this? We have 50 men already inside. 100 more coming through the tunnels as we speak. By dawn, this keep will be ours, and your precious king will be dead. Then you're a fool, Leora said coldly, because the king's guard is already moving to the lower levels. Your men are walking into a trap. Dennick's face twisted with rage. He lunged. Leora grabbed the only thing within reach, a heavy iron candelabra, and swung. It connected with his temple with a sickening crack. Dennick collapsed, the knife clattering to the floor. Elise screamed. Leora stood over Dennick's unconscious body, the candelabra still clutched in her shaking hands, and realized with perfect clarity that there was no going back now. She'd just struck a lord. In defense or not, that was a death sentence. Unless they won. Come on, she said to Elise, her voice steadier than she felt. We need to move. They ran. Behind them, the keep erupted into chaos. Shouts, steel clashing, the deep boom of doors being battered down. The sweep had turned into a battle. Leora got Elise to the servants' exit, pushed her through. Run to the village. Find the inn called the Broken Wheel. Tell them Leora sent you. They'll keep you safe. What about you? I'm going back. You'll die. Maybe. Leora managed to smile. But I'm not leaving him. She closed the door and turned back toward the chaos, toward the sounds of battle, toward the impossible man who'd seen her when no one else would. The sound of steel meeting steel echoed through the stone corridors like thunder trapped underground. Leora ran toward it, every instinct screaming at her to turn around, to escape, to survive. But her feet kept moving forward, toward the chaos, toward Kyle. She grabbed a fallen torch from its sconce as she passed, the only weapon she could find. Ridiculous. What was she going to do with fire against armed soldiers? But her hands needed something to hold, or they'd shake apart. The lower levels were a nightmare. Bodies on the ground, guards, infiltrators. She couldn't tell which in the flickering light. Blood slicked the stones. Someone was screaming, high and terrible, the sound cutting off abruptly into silence that was somehow worse. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with two men in unmarked armor dragging a wounded guard between them. They looked up, saw her, and one of them smiled. Well, he said, dropping the guard, look what we have here. Leora threw the torch. It hit him square in the face. He shrieked, stumbling back, and she ran past him, her heart trying to hammer its way out of her chest. Footsteps pounded behind her. They were coming. She wasn't going to make it. She was going to die in a hallway just like she'd always known she would. Forgotten, and a hand grabbed her arm and yanked her sideways into a side passage. She opened her mouth to scream and another hand clamped over it. Quiet, Captain Rendall's voice, rough and urgent. He released her once they were hidden in the shadows. What in all hells are you doing here? I told you to get out. I couldn't leave, Leora gasped. Where's the king? Main storage hall. We cornered their leader there, but... He grimaced. It's bad. They have hostages, kitchen staff, servants, at least a dozen. Her blood went cold. Who's their leader? See for yourself. He jerked his head toward the end of the passage. But stay hidden. If they see you... She was already moving. The main storage hall was massive, a cavernous space normally used for grain and supplies. Now it was a battlefield. Kyle's guards formed a perimeter near the entrance, weapons drawn but not advancing. In the center of the hall, surrounded by armed men, stood a cluster of terrified servants on their knees. And in front of them, holding a blade to an old woman's throat, was Lady Constance. Leora's stomach lurched. Not Constance. Anyone but her. The lady was beloved in the keep, known for her charity, her kindness to the lower staff. She'd personally helped Leora once when she'd been sick with fever, brought medicine from her own stores. Put down your weapons, Constance called out, her voice steady and cold, or I start killing them. One every minute until you comply. Kale stood at the front of his guards, his face a mask of controlled fury. Let them go, Constance. This is between you and me. Oh, Kale. She smiled, and it was nothing like the warm expression Leora remembered. It stopped being between us the moment you chose to believe a servant over your own nobility. That's when I knew you were too weak to rule. Weak? Kael's voice was quiet, dangerous. I'll show you weakness. You'll show me nothing. She pressed the blade harder. The old woman, Leora recognized her now, Martha from the kitchens, whimpered. Your guards drop their weapons and retreat, or Martha dies. Then the boy, then the girl, one by one until you understand that your precious common people aren't worth protecting. They're worth more than you, Kael said flatly. Then prove it. Save them. All you have to do is surrender. Leora saw it then, the calculation in Kael's eyes. He was actually considering it. He was going to give himself up to save them because that's who he was, a king who valued every life, even when it cost him everything. Don't. The word came out before she could stop it. Every head in the hall turned toward her. Constance's eyes narrowed. Leora Vance, the little rat who started all this. How appropriate that you're here to watch it end. Leora stepped out of the shadows, ignoring Rendall's hissed curse behind her. Her legs felt like water, but she kept walking, kept moving until she was standing beside Kael. You can't win, Leora said to Constance. Even if you kill us all, the kingdom knows now. The border lords are coming. Your conspiracy is exposed. This is just revenge. Revenge? Constance laughed. Child, this isn't revenge. This is justice. Kael's father destroyed my family, took our lands, our titles, our dignity, all because we questioned his authority. He reduced us to beggars playing at nobility, and when I tried to rebuild, when I married into another house to reclaim what was ours, Kael continued his father's work. He denied every petition, blocked every trade agreement, kept us weak and desperate. So you decided to destroy the entire kingdom. Kael's voice was harsh. That's your justice? I decided to take what should have been mine from the beginning. The crown, the power, the respect. She shifted her grip on Martha. And you're going to help me do it. Order your guards to stand down, now. And if I don't? Constance smiled and drew the blade across Martha's throat. The old woman's eyes went wide. Blood, dark and terrible, poured down her chest. She collapsed without a sound. The hall erupted, guards surging forward, Constance's men raising weapons, servants screaming. Leora felt Kael move beside her, felt him start to charge, and knew with absolute certainty that if he did, they'd all die. Constance wanted chaos, wanted the bloodbath, wanted Kael to break formation and rush in so her archers, yes, there, in the shadows of the upper gallery, could cut him down. Leora grabbed his arm. Wait! She just killed... I know. Wait! He looked at her, and something in her expression must have registered because he stopped. Held position. The guards, taking their cue from him, froze mid-charge. Constance's smile faltered. What are you doing? Thinking, Leora said. She was desperately trying to find the pattern, the way out. Constance had hostages, but not enough men to hold the hall against Kael's full guard. She had archers, but they were poorly positioned, too far back, limited angles. And the hostages themselves, Leora's eyes tracked across them. 12 people. No, 13. One of them wasn't kneeling like the others. A young man, barely 20, standing slightly apart. His hands weren't bound. His expression wasn't terrified. He was one of Constance's. You're not trying to hold the keep, Leora said slowly. You never were. Constance's eyes flicked to her, sharp and assessing. You're stalling, Leora continued, pieces clicking into place. You need time. But for what? She scanned the hall again, looking for what she'd missed. Storage hall, grain, supplies, old ventilation shafts leading to... The cisterns, Leora breathed. You're flooding the cisterns. Kael's head snapped toward her. What? The water supply for the entire keep comes through the lower cisterns. If you flood them, poison them. She looked at Constance. How long until the toxin spreads? 30 minutes? An hour? Constance's smile returned, vicious and triumphant. 20 minutes. And it's already been 15. By the time you reach the cisterns and reverse it, if you even can, half the keep will be dead by morning. The other half will be too sick to fight. My forces outside will walk in unopposed. You'd poison your own people, Kael said, his voice hollow with disbelief. I'd poison yours. My people left days ago. Everyone loyal to me is long gone. She gestured to her soldiers. These are mercenaries. Well-paid mercenaries who don't drink the keep's water. And when the dying starts, when the panic sets in, they'll open the gates and let in the real army. The real army. Leora's mind raced. How many? Where? And how had they missed the grain shipments, she said suddenly. That's how you moved them in. Hidden in the merchant caravans, spread across 2 months of deliveries. You didn't bring an army, you assembled one inside the walls. Constance inclined her head. Very good. Perhaps you're not as useless as you look, but it doesn't matter now. You have a choice, Kael. Chase me and try to stop the poison, which you won't. The mechanisms are locked and trapped. Or save your precious servants here and let everyone else die. She was moving backward as she spoke, her soldiers forming up around her, the fake hostage joining their ranks. They were retreating toward the south exit, leaving the real hostages behind. Kael's jaw clenched. I'll find you. I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. You'll try. Constance reached the exit. Give my regards to your dying kingdom, Your Majesty. She vanished into the darkness, her men following. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Kael was shouting orders. Rendal, take 50 men to the cistern. Smash the doors open if you have to. Get that poison stopped. Heron, secure the gates. No one leaves. I want every merchant caravan searched. Marvik, get these hostages to safety and lock down the upper levels. The hall exploded into organized chaos, guards running, servants being ushered out. Kael turned to Leora, and his eyes were blazing. Go with the hostages. Get to safety. No. Leora, this isn't... Where are you going? He hesitated just for a moment. After her. She's heading for the east tunnels. There's a passage that leads outside the walls. If she reaches her army, then I'm coming with you. You're not a soldier. Neither is she. Leora grabbed a fallen sword from the ground. It was too heavy, awkward in her hands, but she held it anyway. You need someone who knows how she thinks. I've watched her for years. I know her patterns. This is insane. Everything about this is insane. But you trusted me before. Trust me now. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he grabbed her hand, calloused fingers intertwining with hers, and pulled her toward the south exit. If you die, he said, I'll never forgive you. Same. They ran. The east tunnels were ancient, carved during the keep's founding for escape routes and supply lines. Narrow, dripping with moisture, lit only by scattered torches that threw wild shadows on the walls. Kael moved fast, sure-footed, and Leora struggled to keep pace. She'll have traps, Leora panted. She's too careful not to. I know. Watch your step. They found the first trap 50 yards in, a tripwire connected to a crossbow mechanism. Kael spotted it, disabled it with quick efficiency. The second trap was harder, a pressure plate that would have collapsed the ceiling. They went around it carefully, losing precious time. How far to the exit? Leora asked. 1/4 mile, but the passage splits into 3 branches up ahead. If we choose wrong, we won't. Leora closed her eyes, thinking. Constance was methodical, careful. She'd choose the path that offered the best escape, the quickest route to... The middle passage, Leora said. It's the longest, but it has the most exits. She'd want options in case we cut her off. Kael didn't question it. They took the middle passage. 200 yards in, they heard voices ahead. Kael signaled for quiet. They crept forward, the sword slippery in Leora's sweating palms. The passage opened into a small chamber. Constance stood there with 3 soldiers, examining a map by torchlight. Iko pautukit tosmete. Told you the timing was too tight, one of the soldiers was saying. If the king reaches the cisterns, he won't, Constance said. The locks will hold, and even if they don't, the damage is done. The poison's fast-acting. By dawn, you'll be dead. Kael stepped into the chamber, sword raised. His guards, 4 of them, Leora hadn't even realized they'd been following, fanned out behind him. Constance smiled. Kael, I expected you to be busy playing hero at the cisterns. I delegated. Funny thing about being king, other people can follow orders too. But can they follow them well enough? She tilted her head. Tell me, how many do you think will die before they figure out the mechanism? 50? 100? Your precious servants, your loyal guards, all choking on poisoned water while you waste time on me. You're the poison, Kael said coldly, and I'm cutting you out. Constance's soldiers moved to engage. Kael's guards met them with brutal efficiency. Steel rang against steel in the confined space, deafening and chaotic. Leora pressed back against the wall, trying to stay out of the way. One of Constance's soldiers broke through the line, swinging at Kael from the side. Leora didn't think. She lunged with the too heavy sword, catching the soldier's blade mid-swing. The impact nearly tore the weapon from her hands, but she held on, teeth gritted. Kael dispatched the soldier with one swift strike, then turned to her. I told you to stay back. You're welcome. A sharp pain exploded in her side. She looked down, confused, and saw a dagger buried to the hilt just below her ribs. Constance stood behind her, smiling that terrible smile. Apologies, Constance said, but you really should have stayed out of this. She pulled the dagger free. Leora's legs gave out. She was falling, the world tilting sideways. She saw Kael's face contort with rage, saw him move toward Constance with murder in his eyes, heard the sound of the dagger clattering to the stone floor. Everything went blurry. She was on the ground now, cold stone against her cheek, warm blood spreading beneath her. Someone was shouting her name, but the sound was distant, underwater, pain, sharp and bright, and all-consuming. Leora, stay with me, Kael's voice. Kael's hands pressing against her side, trying to stop the bleeding, his face above hers, desperate and afraid. I'm fine, she tried to say, but it came out as a whisper. You're not fine. You're... His voice cracked. Don't you dare die. Do you hear me? Don't you dare. She wanted to tell him it was okay, that at least she'd mattered, at least she'd been seen, but her lips wouldn't form the words. Distantly, she heard sounds of combat ending, heard someone say, Constance is dead. The soldiers surrendered. Get a healer, Kael roared. Now! Your Majesty, the cisterns. I don't care about the cisterns. Get a healer, or I'll kill every one of you myself. Strong arms lifting her, Kael carrying her, running. She'd never been carried before. It was almost nice, despite the pain. Despite everything. Stay awake, he was saying. Keep your eyes open. Look at me, Leora. Look at me. She tried. His face swam in and out of focus. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For being useless. For not being... You're not useless. You're everything. You're... He choked on the words. You're everything, and you're not allowed to leave. Everything went dark. When she woke, the pain was worse, sharper, more immediate, which meant she was alive. She opened her eyes slowly. A ceiling, stone, familiar. The infirmary. Don't move, a woman's voice. The healer, Alara, leaning over her. The knife missed anything vital, but you lost a lot of blood. You need to rest. The cisterns, Leora croaked. Secured. Captain Rendall's men broke through in time. The poison was stopped. Relief flooded through her. The keep? Safe. The hidden soldiers have been rounded up. The gates are locked down. We're still finding pockets of resistance, but Alara's expression softened. You did it. You saved us. Leora closed her eyes. I almost died. You did die. For about 30 seconds. His Majesty wouldn't let you go. Alara's voice was gentle. He breathed life back into you himself. Wouldn't let anyone else touch you until you were stable. Where is he? Dealing with the aftermath. It's been 3 days. You've been unconscious. 3 days. She'd lost 3 days. Rest now, Alara said. He'll be back. He's barely left your side. Leora drifted off again, in and out of consciousness. Time became fluid. Sometimes she woke to find Alara changing bandages. Sometimes she woke to voices in the hallway. Once, she woke to find Kael sitting beside her bed, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. She reached out, touched his hand. He looked up, and his eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. You're awake, he said hoarsely. You're crying. I'm not. But his voice broke on the words. She squeezed his hand. I'm okay. You died. You died. And I... He stopped, swallowing hard. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I've led men into battle. I've watched friends die. But watching you, he looked away. I can't do this without you. You're the king. You don't need... Don't! He turned back to her, fierce and desperate. Don't tell me I don't need you. I've needed you since the moment you stood in that hall and told the truth, when it would have been easier to lie. You're the bravest, most stubborn, most infuriating person I've ever met. And I... He stopped himself. You what? She whispered. He leaned down, his forehead touching hers. I can't lose you. I won't. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Together, she agreed. He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. Sleep, heal. And when you're strong enough, a ghost of a smile. We have a kingdom to rebuild. She drifted off again, but this time it was peaceful. Safe. When she woke next, Kael was gone, but there was a note on the bedside table in his sharp, precise handwriting. Council meeting. Back soon. Don't get stabbed again. She almost laughed. Then she tried to sit up and gasped at the pain. Easy. Alara was there, helping her. You're healing, but slowly. That knife did more damage than it should have. What do you mean? Alara's expression was troubled. It was poisoned. Not deadly, but something that slows healing, weakens the body. You're going to need weeks to recover fully, maybe months. Weeks? She couldn't afford weeks. There was too much to do. Does the king know? Leora asked. Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Don't tell him. He has enough to worry about. Leora, please. She met Alara's eyes. He needs to focus on the kingdom right now, not on me. Alara hesitated, then nodded slowly. As you wish. But you need to tell him eventually. I will, when the time is right. But when was the right time to tell the king that the poison slowly killing you might be permanent? Footsteps in the hallway. Multiple people. Voices raised in argument. Kael entered, followed by Lord Heron and Captain Rendall. All three looked grim. You're awake, Kael said, relief crossing his face. Then to the others, give us a moment. They left, closing the door behind them. Kael sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle her. There's a problem. What kind? The kind where half the nobility wants your head on a spike. She blinked. What? You struck Lord Dennick. You interfered in a military operation. You entered royal chambers without permission. He smiled slightly. You've broken approximately 17 different laws. The nobles are demanding I prosecute you to the full extent. Her stomach dropped. Oh. Oh, indeed. He took her hand. They're calling for execution. The room tilted. But we stopped them. We saved... I know what you did. But the law is the law, and they're using it as leverage. Either I punish you, or they refuse to recognize my authority. So punish me, Leora said quietly. Do what you have to do. No. Kael, no. His grip tightened. I'm not killing the woman who saved this kingdom. I'm not executing you to appease nobles who were too blind to see the threat under their noses. Then what are you going to do? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, something unprecedented. Something that will either secure our future or destroy everything. Tell me. He looked at her, and there was something in his eyes, fear and hope, and desperate determination all mixed together. I'm going to make you my queen. The words hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Leora stared at him. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. You can't, she said finally. I can. I'm the king. Kael, you can't just... She struggled to sit up fully, wincing as the wound pulled. You can't make me queen because you're trying to save my life. That's not how this works. I'm not doing it to save your life. His voice was steady, certain. I'm doing it because you're the only person in this entire kingdom who's proven they can be trusted, who sees things no one else does, who acts when others freeze. He leaned closer. You're the only person I want standing beside me. I'm a servant. You were a servant. Now you're the woman who exposed a conspiracy, saved the crown, and nearly died protecting this kingdom. His hand cupped her face. And if they can't see your worth, then they're blind. They'll never accept it. The nobles will revolt. Let them try. His jaw set. I've had enough of noble privilege, of bloodlines determining worth. If they revolt, I'll crush them. But I won't kill you to appease their pride. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him this was insane, impossible, would destroy everything he'd built. But looking into his eyes, she saw something that stopped her. He meant it. Every word. They'll call me opportunist, she said quietly. They'll say I seduced you, used you, climbed over bodies to get power. They already say worse. It'll make everything harder. Good. A ghost of a smile. I like a challenge. Despite everything, she almost laughed. You're serious. Completely. And if I say no? His expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through. Then I'll respect your choice. But you'll still need protection from the nobles. I can grant you lands, a title, enough resources to disappear if you want. He paused. But I'm hoping you don't want that. What do I want? I don't know. Tell me. She looked at him. This impossible man who'd listened when no one else would, who'd trusted her instinct over tradition, who'd carried her bleeding body through tunnels while his kingdom burned, who sat beside her bed for 3 days waiting for her to wake up. I want, she said slowly, to not be invisible anymore. Then marry me. Stand beside me. Help me rebuild this kingdom into something better than it was. I don't know how to be queen. I didn't know how to be king. We'll figure it out together. The door burst open. Lord Heron stood there, face flushed with anger. Your Majesty, we need to discuss. He stopped, seeing them. Am I interrupting? Yes, Kael said flatly. This can't wait. The Noble Council is demanding an immediate answer about the Vance woman. They want a trial date set, execution scheduled within the week. Kael stood slowly, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Tell the Noble Council that there will be no trial. Your Majesty. Tell them, Kael continued, his voice soft and deadly, that Leora Vance is under my personal protection, and that I'm making her my queen. Heron's face went white. You can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking? The council will accept it or find themselves without positions. Kael's eyes were steel. I'm done pretending that noble blood makes someone worthy. Leora has proven her worth through action. That's more than most of them can claim. This is madness. Your Majesty, think about what you're doing. The precedent this sets is exactly the precedent I want to set. Kael moved toward him. Power isn't inherited. It's earned. And she's earned it 1,000 times over while your precious nobles were plotting treason in their wine cellars. But the people loved Constance, and she tried to poison them all. The people respect titles, and Varric used his to betray us. Kael's voice dropped lower. Maybe it's time the people started respecting courage instead. Heron looked like he'd swallowed broken glass. The announcement will cause chaos. Then we'll weather it. Inform the council. We announce at sunset. Your Majesty, that's an order, Lord Heron, not a request. Heron stood rigid for a moment, then bowed stiffly and left. The door closed. Silence settled. That went well, Leora said weakly. Kael turned back to her, and some of the hardness left his face. You haven't said yes. You haven't exactly given me time to process. Is that a no? She looked at him. Really looked. Saw the man beneath the crown, scared, determined, hoping against hope that she wouldn't reject him. It's not a no, she said finally. Relief flooded his expression. He sat back down, taking her hand. Then what is it? You're completely insane, but I might be insane enough to try. She squeezed his fingers. Ask me again. Properly. He stared at her. Then, incredibly, he smiled. You want me to propose? You just announced it to your council without asking first. I think I deserve an actual question. He shook his head, but he was still smiling. He slid off the bed and, moving carefully, mindful of her injury, knelt beside it. Leora Vance, he said, his voice suddenly quiet and sincere. Will you marry me? Will you stand beside me and help me build something better? Will you be my queen, my partner, my... He stopped, swallowed. Will you take a chance on us? Her throat tightened. I'm poisoned. Alara said the knife was coated with something. I might not heal properly. I might be weak for months, maybe longer. I don't care. I'm going to make mistakes, huge ones. I don't know anything about ruling. Neither do I. Not really. We'll learn. The nobles will hate me. Some of them. Others will come around. He brushed his thumb across her knuckles. And the ones who don't can leave. You're willing to risk everything for this. I already did. The moment I believed you in that hall. His eyes held hers. So, what do you say? She thought about every year of invisibility, every moment of being dismissed, ignored, treated like furniture, every time she'd bitten back words because they wouldn't matter anyway. She thought about Kael's hand in hers as the court watched, about the way he'd looked at her when she'd told the truth, about 3 days of him refusing to leave her side. Yes, she whispered. He released a breath he'd been holding. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. I'll be your queen. I'll probably fail spectacularly, but she managed a smile. Yes. He stood, leaned down, and kissed her, gentle, careful, reverent. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. We should probably tell people, he said. You already told Heron. I meant people who'll be happy about it. She laughed, then winced at the pain it caused. Start with Captain Rendall. He'll have a heart attack, but at least he won't argue. Kael left to make arrangements, and Leora was alone with the enormity of what she'd just agreed to. Queen. Her. The woman who'd spent 43 years scrubbing floors. Alara entered a few minutes later, carrying fresh bandages. Her expression was carefully neutral. I heard, she said. And I think you're either very brave or very stupid. Alara began unwrapping the old bandages. Probably both. That seems to be the consensus. The poison is slowing your recovery. You're going to need help, constant care. You won't be able to hide it forever. I know. Does he know how bad it is? Leora hesitated. Not yet. Tell him. He deserves to know what he's signing up for. I will, when the immediate crisis is over. Alara's hand stilled. Leora, there's always going to be a crisis. That's what ruling is. If you wait for the perfect moment, you'll never tell him. Then I'll tell him soon. I promise. Alara sighed but didn't push. She finished changing the bandages in silence, then helped Leora into a sitting position. Can you stand? Alara asked. I don't know. Try. If you're going to be queen, you can't do it from a bed. Leora gritted her teeth and pushed herself up. Her legs shook, the room spun, but she stayed upright, gripping the bedpost for support. Good, Alara said. Now walk. 3 steps. That's all she managed before her knees buckled. Alara caught her, eased her back onto the bed. We'll try again tomorrow, Alara said gently. Tomorrow. And the day after. And the day after that. How long until she could stand without shaking? Until she could walk across a room without collapsing? How long until she could stand beside Kael as his equal instead of his burden? Sunset came too fast. Kael returned to help her dress, not in a servant's plain clothes, but in a gown one of the noble ladies had been forced to donate. Deep blue wool, simple but elegant. It hurt to lift her arms, hurt to breathe deeply, but she managed. He offered his arm. Ready? No, but let's do it anyway. They walked slowly through the keep. Servants stopped to stare. Guards straightened at attention. Word had clearly spread. The great hall was packed. Every noble who remained at court stood in clusters, their faces ranging from shocked to outraged to calculating. The servants lined the walls, uncertain and afraid. Kael led Leora to the dais. She could feel every eye on her, could hear the whispers starting, a low murmur like distant thunder. He helped her sit in the chair beside his throne, not the queen's throne, that was draped in dust covers, hadn't been used since his mother died, but a chair nonetheless, a position of honor. Kael remained standing. The hall gradually fell silent. 3 weeks ago, he began, his voice carrying to every corner, this kingdom faced a threat from within. A conspiracy that spanned years involved dozens of traitors and came within hours of succeeding. We would have fallen, not to invasion, not to war, but to our own corruption. He paused, letting that sink in. The conspiracy was uncovered by one person, a person most of you never noticed, never valued, never saw as anything more than a servant. His gaze swept the room. Lyora Vance saw what you missed, acted when you froze, risked everything when you risked nothing. Murmurs now, louder. Some of you want her executed for breaking laws, for striking a lord, for entering places she shouldn't have been. Kale's voice went hard. But those same laws protected the traitors. Those same traditions blinded us to the threat. So I'm changing them. The murmurs became shouts. Kale held up a hand and they died reluctantly. Effective immediately, the law that forbids commoners from approaching the crown is dissolved. Any citizen can petition me directly. Any citizen can report wrongdoing without fear of punishment. And any citizen, he looked down at Lyora, can rise as high as their merit allows. Your Majesty, Lord Dennick, recovered from his head wound, apparently, pushed forward. You cannot simply dismantle centuries of tradition. I just did. The noble houses will never accept a commoner as queen. Then the noble houses can leave. Kale's voice was ice. I don't rule for you. I rule for the people, all of them. And Lyora Vance represents those people better than any of you ever have. She's a servant, someone shouted from the back. She was a servant, Kale corrected. Now she's the woman who saved your lives. Show some gratitude. This is an outrage. This is justice. Kyle descended the dais steps, moving into the crowd. They parted before him like water. You want to talk about outrage? Let's talk about Varric Thorn, a lord, noble blood, centuries of lineage. And he tried to sell the crown. Let's talk about Lady Constance, beloved, charitable, respected. And she tried to poison you all. He stopped in front of Dennick. Let's talk about you, Lord Dennick, who met with her in secret, who received gold from her coffers, who knew about the conspiracy and said nothing. Dennick's face went white. You never reported it. That makes you complicit. You're under arrest. Guards moved before Dennick could react, seizing his arms. He struggled, shouting protests, but they dragged him toward the doors. Anyone else want to question my judgment? Kyle asked the room. Silence. Absolute and terrified. Good. He returned to the dais to Lyora, extended his hand. Stand with me. She took his hand, let him help her up. Pain lanced through her side, but she kept her face neutral, stood beside him, facing the hall. Lyora Vance, Kyle said formally, do you accept the responsibilities of the crown? Do you swear to serve this kingdom and its people above all else? She looked at the assembled crowd, at the nobles who hated her, at the servants who couldn't believe what they were seeing, at Kyle, steady and certain beside her. I do, she said clearly. Then I name you Crown Princess of Thornvale. In 1 month, we'll be married, and you'll be queen. The hall erupted, some shouting support, more shouting outrage, everyone shouting something. Kale let them vent for exactly 30 seconds. Then he raised his hand again. Dismissed, all of you, except his eyes found specific faces in the crowd. Captain Rendall, Lord Heron, Lady Myrelle, Mushele, Master Thomas, and Cook Marla. You stay. The hall cleared slowly, reluctantly. When only the named individuals remained, Kyle gestured them forward. These are my new council, he said. Captain Rendall for military, Lord Heron for noble relations, Lady Myrelle for trade and economy, Master Thomas for infrastructure, and Cook Marla for common welfare. Marla looked like she might faint. Your Majesty, I'm just a cook. You're someone who spent 30 years managing the keep's food supply, who knows how to feed 1,000 people on a limited budget, who understands practical logistics better than most lords understand theory. Kale smiled slightly. You're perfect. But I can't read. We'll teach you, or we'll get you a scribe. Whatever you need. He looked at each of them in turn. I'm building something new here, something that values competence over bloodline. Are you with me? Rendall nodded immediately. Heron looked deeply uncomfortable, but nodded. Myrelle, a merchant's daughter who'd married into minor nobility, smiled. Thomas, who'd worked his way up from stable boy to master builder, grinned. Marla still looked terrified, but whispered, Yes, Your Majesty. Then we start tomorrow. For tonight, Cale glanced at Leora, saw her swaying slightly. We rest. He dismissed them and turned to Leora immediately. You need to lie down. I'm fine. You're pale and shaking. Don't lie to me. She wanted to argue, but her legs were giving out. He caught her, lifted her carefully, carried her from the hall. Back in her room, soon to be their room, she supposed, that thought still strange, he laid her down gently. I pushed you too hard, he said, self-recrimination in his voice. I needed to be there. You need to heal. I will. Eventually, maybe. If the poison didn't kill her first. He sat beside her, brushing hair from her forehead. This is going to be difficult, the transition. They'll resist every step. I know. Some will try to hurt you. I know that too. And you're still willing? She caught his hand, held it against her cheek. I told you, I'm done being invisible. Whatever comes, I'd rather face it standing beside you than hiding in a kitchen. He leaned down, kissed her forehead. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start changing everything. She drifted off with his hand in hers, and for the first time in her life, sleep came without nightmares. The next morning brought the first test. Leora woke to shouting outside her window. She struggled to the glass, looked down into the courtyard. A crowd had gathered. 50 people, maybe more. Servants mostly, but some merchants and common folk from the town. They were chanting something she couldn't quite make out. Alara bustled in. You shouldn't be out of bed. What are they saying? Alara's expression was complicated. They're supporting you. Word spread overnight about what happened. About the king naming you princess. They're calling you the people's queen. Leora stared down at them. A woman saw her in the window and pointed. The chanting got louder, more distinct now. Long live Princess Leora. Long live the people's queen. Her throat tightened. They don't even know me. They know what you did, and they know what it means that someone like them can rise. Alara helped her back to bed. You're a symbol now, whether you want to be or not. A symbol. She'd gone from invisible to a symbol in less than a month. The whiplash was dizzying. Kael arrived an hour later, bringing breakfast and news. The common folk are rallying, he said, setting down a tray. But the nobles are pushing back hard. 3 houses have already withdrawn from court. 2 more are threatening to. Is that bad? Depends on perspective. It clears out the ones who'd actively work against us. But it also weakens our political base. He sat beside her. How are you feeling? Sore. But I can stand. I walked to the window this morning. Pride crossed his face. Good. Because we have our first official function in 3 days. Noble reception. You'll need to attend. Will I need to stand the whole time? We'll get you a chair. Make it a statement. The crown sits when it chooses, not when tradition dictates. You're really enjoying dismantling the rules, aren't you? Completely. He grinned. Plus it drives Heron insane, which is a bonus. She laughed, then winced. He immediately looked concerned. The wound? It's fine. Just tender. He studied her face. Alara said the healing is slow. It's complicated. The knife was poisoned. I know. She told me. His jaw tightened. Why didn't you? Because you had a kingdom to save. My injury wasn't the priority. You're always the priority. He took her hand. Don't hide things from me. We're partners now. That means sharing everything, even the bad. She looked at their joined hands. The poison might be permanent, or at least long-lasting. I might never be fully strong again. Then we adapt. Kael, I mean it. We'll figure it out. Get you healers, medicines, whatever you need. You're not doing this alone. The simplicity of his certainty made her chest ache. You really mean that? Every word. 3 days later, she stood, leaning heavily on Kael's arm, in the reception hall as nobles filed past. Most were stiffly polite, some openly hostile. A few, surprisingly, seemed cautiously supportive. Lady Morell approached with another woman, introducing her. Your Highness, may I present Lady Thane? Her family controls the eastern trade routes. Lady Thane curtsied, but her eyes were sharp and assessing. Congratulations, Princess. Quite the remarkable ascension. Thank you, Lady Thane. I'll be honest. Most of us thought the king had lost his mind, but after the conspiracy, she paused. Perhaps we need someone who sees differently. Someone who knows what happens in the shadows because they lived there. That's a diplomatic way of calling me common. Thane's lips twitched. I prefer practical. The kingdom needs practical right now. It wasn't warm support, but it was something. Was. More nobles followed, some sneered, others were simply curious, and a handful, merchants who'd married into nobility, younger sons of minor houses, actually seemed hopeful. By the end of the reception, Leora was exhausted, and her wound was bleeding through the bandage. But she'd survived, more than survived. She'd shown them she could stand there and take their judgment without flinching. Kale helped her back to their chambers. You did well. I barely spoke. You didn't have to. You were there, that's what mattered. He helped her sit, kneeling to unlace her shoes. Tomorrow we start your education. Reading, writing, history, law. I can't read. I know, that's why we're starting tomorrow. He looked up at her. You think I care that you're starting from the beginning? Everyone starts somewhere. Most queens don't start at 43, but most queens inherit the title. You earned it. He stood, cupped her face. Stop comparing yourself to them. You're something new, something better. Over the following weeks, Leora threw herself into learning, reading lessons with a patient scholar who didn't flinch at her slow progress, history lessons that showed her how fragile kingdoms were, how many had fallen to internal rot, law lessons that revealed how deeply the system had been designed to protect the powerful. She learned politics from Heron, though he clearly resented teaching her. She learned military strategy from Rendall, who proved surprisingly good at explaining complex tactics in simple terms. She learned economics from Mirel, who made trade routes sound like puzzles to solve. And slowly, painfully, she learned to be what Kael needed her to be. The wound healed eventually. Not completely. Alara said the poison had left permanent damage, that she'd always have reduced strength on that side, but enough. Enough to walk without help, enough to stand through ceremonies, enough to function. The wedding was set for the first day of spring. The night before, Kael found her in their chambers, staring out at the courtyard where a crowd had gathered again. They'd been gathering every night, the common folk, lighting candles and singing songs about the people's queen. Nervous? He asked. Terrified. What if I fail? Then we fail together. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, careful of her side. But I don't think you will. You're too stubborn to fail. That's not reassuring. It's accurate. He kissed her temple. Tomorrow changes everything. Are you ready? She looked down at the candles flickering in the dark, at the faces of people who'd never had a voice before and now saw one in her, at the impossible journey from kitchen servant to crown princess. No, she said honestly, but I'll do it anyway. That's my queen. The wedding was small by royal standards but felt enormous to Leora. The great hall packed with witnesses, nobles on one side, common folk on the other. Kael had insisted on opening half the hall to regular citizens, first time in Thornvale's history. She wore white and gold, colors of the crown. Kael wore black and silver. They stood before the kingdom's eldest priest and spoke vows that felt both ancient and brand new. When Kael placed the crown on her head, a smaller, lighter version of his own, the weight of it was terrifying and right all at once. Your Majesty, he said softly and smiled. The hall erupted in cheers. Not everyone, not even most, but enough. The common folk roared their approval. Some of the younger nobles joined in. Even a few of the older ones clapped politely. And Leora stood there, crowned and married and utterly changed from the woman who'd scrubbed floors 4 months ago, and thought, I did it. We did it. The feast afterward was chaotic. Music, dancing, speeches. Kael kept her close, deflecting the worst of the attention, making sure she had chances to rest. Near midnight, as the celebration showed no signs of stopping, Captain Rendell approached with urgent news. Your Majesties, Border Patrol reports movement. Large force approaching from the south. The joy drained from the room. How large? Kael asked. At least 2,000, maybe more. They're flying Constance's banner. Her allies, Leora said. The real army she was planning to let in. They don't know she's dead. Kael's hand found hers. Then we tell them. Rendall, assemble the council. We have a war to prevent. Your Majesty, it's your wedding night. It's my kingdom. Kael looked at Leora. Our kingdom. And we defend it. Always. She stood, crown settled on her head, wedding dress brushing the floor, and followed him from the hall. The nobles and commons parted before them, and for the first time Leora saw something in their eyes beyond judgment or curiosity. Respect. They gathered in the council chamber. Kyle, Leora, Rendell, Heron, Morel, Marla, Thomas, and studied maps by candlelight. "We can't fight 2,000, Heron said. "We have maybe 800 combat-ready soldiers." "We don't fight them," Leora said. Everyone looked at her. "We show them they've already lost. Constance was their way in. Without her, they're just an army at our border with no excuse to invade." "They'll attack anyway," Rendell said. "Not if we give them a better option." She traced the map. "What if we send an envoy? Show them proof of Constance's death. Offer them gold to leave peacefully." "Bribing them?" Heron looked scandalized. "Preventing war," Leora corrected, "which costs less in gold and lives than fighting." Cale was staring at her with that expression again, the one that said he saw something no one else did. "It could work, if we move fast." "I'll go," Leora said. "Absolutely not. They need to see what's changed. A servant on the throne, a kingdom that thinks differently. I'm the proof that Constance's way failed." She met his eyes. "I'm the best envoy we have. You just got crowned. You're still healing, and you want to ride out to meet an enemy army?" "Yes." He closed his eyes, opened them. "You're going to give me a heart condition. Is that a yes?" "That's a if you get killed, I'll resurrect you just to kill you again." He turned to Rendell. 50 guards, best riders. They leave at dawn." "I'll prepare them," Rendell said, and left. Cale pulled Leora aside as the others dispersed. "This is insane." "Most of what we've done is insane." "Fair point." He rested his forehead against hers. "Come back to me." Always. Dawn came cold and clear. Leora rode out in simple armor, crown left behind but a circlet of gold marking her status. 50 guards surrounded her, and beside her, because he'd refused to let her go alone, rode Kyle. They reached the enemy army by midday. 2,000 soldiers camped across the southern border, their lines organized and ready for invasion. A commander rode forward to meet them. He looked at Leora's circlet, at Cale's crown, with confusion. "I'm here to speak with your leader," Cale said. "That would be Lord Markham, but I don't think—" "Tell him the King and Queen of Thornvale request audience. Tell him Lady Constance is dead. And tell him we have a proposal that benefits everyone." The commander hesitated, then rode back. 20 minutes later, they were brought to a command tent. Lord Markham, an older man, scarred and weathered, studied them with cold calculation. "You claim Constance is dead." "She is." Cale pulled out a sealed document. Her confession, witnessed and signed before her execution. She plotted to overthrow the crown and usher in your forces. That plot failed. She's gone, and you no longer have cause for invasion. Markham read the document slowly. His expression didn't change. "This changes nothing. We were promised lands, gold, position. Your kingdom is weak. We take it." "You can try," Leora said. Everyone looked at her. "But you're 2,000 against a fortified keep with 800 trained soldiers and a population that will fight to the last. Even if you win, how many will you lose? Half? More?" She leaned forward. "Or you could take the gold we're offering, 10,000 pieces. Enough to pay your soldiers, fund your return home, and avoid bloodshed on both sides." "You're bribing us to leave. I'm offering you a choice. Die fighting for a dead woman's failed plan, or profit from a live king's practical offer." Markham's eyes narrowed. "And who are you to make such offers?" "Leora Vance, Queen of Thornvale, former kitchen servant." She smiled slightly. "Someone who knows the value of staying alive and getting paid." He barked a laugh. Surprising, genuine. "A servant queen. Constance said the king had gone mad." He looked at Cale. "Maybe he has." "Completely," Cale agreed. "But mad doesn't mean wrong. Take the gold, Markham. Walk away. Live to fight another day when the odds are better." Markham was quiet for a long time, then 15,000. 12. 13 and we leave today. Cale glanced at Leora. She nodded. "Done," Cale said. They negotiated details for another hour. The gold would be delivered at sunset. Markham's forces would be gone by morning. As they left the tent, Markham called after them. "Queen Leora, a word." She turned back. He studied her. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you." Constance said the kingdom would crumble under weight of its own corruption, that the common folk were weak. He smiled slightly. She was wrong about the first, and very wrong about the second. She was wrong about a lot of things. Clearly, he inclined his head, a gesture of respect between equals. "Good luck, Your Majesty. I suspect you'll need it." They rode back to Thornvale as the sun set behind them, gold changing hands at the border, an army dissolving peacefully into the twilight. Kyle reached over, took her hand. "We just ended a war." "We postponed one," Leora corrected. "But yes. With words and gold instead of blood. Cheaper that way." He laughed, and the sound was bright and free. "You're already better at this than I am." "I'm really not. I'm just stubborn enough to try things that shouldn't work." "Then keep being stubborn." He squeezed her hand. "Because it's changing everything." They returned to the keep as heroes. The common folk lined the streets, cheering. Even the nobles seemed grudgingly impressed. And when Kyle announced the war was over before it began, the hall erupted in celebration again. Late that night, in their private chambers, Kyle pulled her close. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being brave. For seeing solutions I miss. For standing beside me when you could have run." He kissed her gently. "For saying yes." She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Thank you for asking, for seeing me when everyone else looked away. For believing me. Always will." Outside, the kingdom settled into uneasy peace. Nobles grumbling but complying, common folks celebrating their unlikely queen. An army dispersed, a conspiracy crushed, and in the center of it all, a former servant and a stubborn king, building something new from the ashes of what came before. It wasn't perfect, wasn't smooth, wasn't anything like a fairy tale, but it was theirs. 6 months after the wedding, winter returned to Thornvale with a vengeance. But the keep felt different now, warmer somehow, despite the ice coating the windows. Leora stood in what had become her study, a small room overlooking the courtyard where servants and common folk still gathered daily, bringing petitions, asking questions, seeking the queen who'd once been one of them. She was reading through a merchant's complaint about tariffs, her progress still slow, still frustrating, but steady. The door opened without knocking. Only one person did that. "You're supposed to be resting," Kyle said. "I'm sitting. That's practically resting." "Ilara said you were up at dawn again." "Ilara needs to stop reporting my schedule to you." But Leora smiled. The wound still ached in cold weather, probably always would, but she'd learned to work around it. "What's wrong? You have your something's broken face." He crossed the room, handed her a letter. "Lord Ferris is challenging your authority, formally. He's demanding a council review of your position." She read through the letter. Dense legal language, but the message was clear. A queen who couldn't read until 6 months ago had no business making policy decisions. She should be ceremonial, decorative, silent. "He's not wrong about the reading," she said quietly. "He's completely wrong about everything else." Kale leaned against her desk. "You've restructured the welfare system, opened direct petitions to the crown, and reduced noble corruption by 40%. The kingdom runs better now than it has in a generation. The nobles hate me. Some do. Others are coming around." He paused. "But Ferris is powerful. Old family. Connected. If he pushes this, it could split the court. So what do you want me to do?" "I want you to face him. Publicly. Prove him wrong the same way you've proven everyone else wrong." He took her hand. "Think you're up for it?" She looked at the letter again. 6 months ago, she couldn't have read it at all. Now she could parse it slowly, understand the weapons being aimed at her. "When?" she asked. 3 days. Full council session. He's demanding you defend your policies directly. Then I'll defend them." "Leora." "I'm not hiding. Not anymore. If he wants a fight, he gets one." Kale smiled, sharp and proud. "That's my queen." The next 3 days were brutal preparation. Morel drilled her on economic policy. Rendall coached her on military expenditures. Heron, grudgingly, helped her understand the legal framework she'd been working within. Marla simply told her, "You're doing good work. Don't let fancy words make you forget that." The morning of the council session, Leora dressed carefully. Not in the elaborate gowns they kept trying to make her wear, but in simple, elegant clothes that looked professional without screaming wealth. Crown on her head, but her mother's old necklace, a cheap metal thing she'd kept hidden for years, around her neck. Armor and reminder, all at once. The council chamber was packed. Every noble who could make an excuse to attend had shown up. This was entertainment, a servant queen being put in her place. Lord Ferris stood at the front, silver-haired and imperious. He bowed just low enough to be respectful, not low enough to be sincere. "Your Majesty, thank you for agreeing to this review." "I didn't agree," Leora said calmly. "I was challenged. There's a difference." Murmurs through the crowd. Ferris's smile tightened. "Of course. My apologies." He gestured to the assembled council. "I've asked this body to review certain policies enacted under your direction. Specifically, the reformation of the welfare system, the reduction of noble taxation privileges, and the opening of direct petitions to the Crown." "I'm aware of my own policies, Lord Ferris." "Then you're aware they've caused significant disruption. Noble houses are losing revenue. The petitioning system is overwhelmed, and the welfare reforms are expensive." "They're also working," Leora said. "Starvation is down 30%, crime is down 20%, tax revenue is actually up because more people are working instead of dying. Numbers on paper. The reality is chaos. The reality is change. You don't like it because it costs you power." The chamber went very quiet. Ferris's face flushed. "Your Majesty, I have served this kingdom for 40 years. Served your own interests, mostly." Leora stood, ignoring the twinge in her side. "I've read the records, Lord Ferris. Your house claimed tax exemptions on properties you don't even occupy. You charged your own tenants triple the legal rate for grain during the famine 3 years ago. You blocked infrastructure improvements that would have helped common trade because they threatened your merchant monopolies. Those are complex situations. They're theft. Dressed up in legal language, but theft." She walked toward him slowly, the crowd parting. "You want to challenge my authority? Fine. Let's talk about authority. You have a title, a bloodline, a seat you inherited. I have the trust of the people I serve. Which one matters more?" "Blood matters," Ferris said coldly. "Legacy matters. You're a servant playing dress-up, and eventually everyone will see it." "You're right. I am a servant." Leora's voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "I served this kingdom for 43 years before anyone knew my name. I scrubbed your floors. I cooked your meals. I listened to your complaints about the king's policies while you ate food I prepared. And you know what I learned?" She stopped directly in front of him. "I learned that you care more about keeping your power than using it. That you see common people as problems to manage instead of people to serve. That you've built a system designed to protect yourselves while everyone else suffers." She turned to face the full council. "I was invisible for decades, and in that invisibility, I saw everything you thought was hidden. This is outrageous. This is truth." She pulled a document from her sleeve, something she'd spent 2 days writing with Morel's help, checked and rechecked until every word was right. "This is a list of noble houses currently violating tax law. Houses claiming exemptions they're not entitled to. Houses paying servants below legal minimum. Houses blocking common trade to protect their own interests." She dropped it on the council table. Pages scattered. 23 houses, she said, "including yours, Lord Ferris. You want to challenge my authority? I challenge yours. Prove you've earned your position through anything other than birth. Prove you've served this kingdom instead of feeding off it." The chamber erupted. Nobles shouting, some in outrage, others in support. Guards moving to restore order. Through it all, Leora stood still, crown on her head, waiting. Cale rose from his seat. The noise died instantly. "Lord Ferris," he said quietly, "do you have a response to these accusations?" Ferris's face was purple with rage. "This is a witch hunt, a commoner with a grudge trying to tear down everything we've built." "Everything you've built," Leora interrupted, "was built on the backs of people like me, people you never saw, never valued, never considered worth protecting. Well, I'm protecting them now. That's my job. That's what a queen does." "You're not a real queen." "Then remove me." She spread her arms. "Vote, right now. If this council believes I'm unfit to serve, take the crown. Strip my title. Send me back to the kitchens. She looked at Kael, and he nodded slightly, trusting her. But if you vote to remove me, you're voting against every policy I've enacted, against the welfare reforms, against the petition system, against holding noble houses accountable. You're voting to go back to the way things were, when people starved while you hoarded gold. She turned back to the council. So vote. Show the kingdom what you value more, your power or their lives. Silence. Long and terrible. Then Lord Heron stood. Slowly, reluctantly, but he stood. I vote to uphold Her Majesty's position, he said, voice rough, and to investigate the houses on that list. Morel stood immediately. I second. One by one, others rose. Not all of them. Not even most. But enough. Younger nobles, merchant families, a few older lords who'd seen the changes working and couldn't deny it. When the count finished, it was close, 37 to 29. But it was victory. Ferris stared at the standing nobles like they'd betrayed him personally. You're all fools. This will destroy us. No, Kael said, standing beside Leora. It'll save us. Finally. Ferris turned and stormed from the chamber, 3 other lords following. The door slammed behind them. The remaining council members stood awkwardly, unsure what came next. Investigation starts tomorrow, Leora said, her voice steady despite the shaking in her hands. Every house on that list will be audited. Those found violating law will pay fines, serve restitution, or lose privileges. No exceptions. She looked around the room. Anyone else want to challenge my authority? No one spoke. Good. Dismissed. They filed out slowly, whispering. When the chamber was finally empty except for Kael, Leora let herself sag against the table. That was stupid, reckless, political suicide? I was going to say brilliant, Kael said, wrapping his arms around her. But those other things too. She laughed shakily. I thought I was going to throw up. You didn't show it. You stood there like you'd been doing this for decades. I was terrified. Being brave isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. He kissed her forehead. You just reshaped the kingdom's power structure in 20 minutes. I just made a lot of powerful enemies. You already had them. Now they know you're not afraid of them. She pulled back to look at him. Some of them will leave, take their houses, their resources. It could weaken us, or it could strengthen us. Clean house of the rot. He brushed her hair back. Either way, we do it together. Together. 6 months ago, that word would have been impossible. Now it was the foundation everything else was built on. The next few weeks were chaos. The investigation started, and predictably, several noble houses were found deeply corrupt. Fines were levied, property seized. 2 lords were stripped of titles entirely. 3 houses did leave, moving to neighboring kingdoms where the rules were more favorable to nobility. Kael let them go without protest. Anyone who'd rather exploit people elsewhere than serve honestly here isn't worth keeping. But for every house that left, more common people prospered. The welfare reforms took hold. The petition system, once overwhelmed, settled into manageable routine. And slowly, grudgingly, the remaining nobles adapted. Not all of them. Some nursed grudges, plotted in shadows. But enough came around that the kingdom stabilized. Spring came again, bringing warmth and new growth. Leora stood in the courtyard where she'd been dragged in chains 9 months ago. The space looked different now, less imposing, more welcoming. She'd had the stones scrubbed clean, gardens planted around the edges. A place of judgment transformed into a place of gathering. Cook Marla approached, now wearing the formal robes of her council position, but still somehow looking like a cook. Your Majesty, the new kitchen staff are trained, ready to start tomorrow. How many? 40, all common folk, all paid fair wages like you mandated. Marla smiled. Some of them cried when they got the positions. Real jobs with real pay and days off. They couldn't believe it. They shouldn't have to cry for basic fairness. No, but they do because it's been so rare. Marla hesitated. Your Majesty, there's a girl, just hired, reminds me of you, quiet, watchful. She asked if she could meet you, if it's not too much trouble. Leora's throat tightened. Bring her. The girl was maybe 25, thin and nervous, wearing the new kitchen uniform. She curtsied deeply, hands shaking. Your Majesty, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been trying to get work for 2 years, but no one would hire me because I'm. She stopped, swallowed. Because I'm nothing, nobody. But you changed that. You made them see us. Leora stepped forward, took the girl's hands. What's your name? Elena, Your Majesty. Elena, you're not nothing. You never were. You were just unseen. There's a difference. She squeezed the trembling hands. Work hard. Ask questions. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are. And if anyone treats you poorly, you come directly to me. Understand? Elena nodded, tears spilling over. Yes, Your Majesty, thank you. She curtsied again and hurried away, clearly overwhelmed. Marla watched her go. You gave her hope. That's worth more than gold. Hope doesn't feed families. No, but it makes them believe feeding families is possible. That's the first step. Leora watched Elena disappear into the kitchens, her old domain, now foreign territory. She hadn't been back since becoming queen, hadn't wanted to, afraid of what memories would surface. I should visit, she said quietly, see how things are running. They'd like that. The new staff. Knowing you were one of them. I still am one of them. No, Your Majesty. Marla's voice was gentle. You're more now. You're what they could become. That's different. Better. That evening, Kael found her in the library, surrounded by books she was slowly learning to read without help. He sat beside her, pulled her against his side. Rough day? Not rough, just heavy. She leaned into him. I met one of the new kitchen staff, young woman. She thanked me for giving her hope. That's good, isn't it? It is. But it's also, there are thousands like her, tens of thousands, and I can't reach them all, can't change everything. Some days I feel like I'm trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. You are. We all are. But buckets add up. He kissed her temple. The kingdom is better than it was. People are eating who are starving. That matters. Does it matter enough? It matters to the ones eating. That's a start. She closed the book she'd been struggling through. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing this right, if there's a right way to do it at all. There's no perfect way, just the best way you can manage each day. He turned her to face him. You're changing centuries of corruption. That doesn't happen cleanly. It doesn't happen without mistakes. But it is happening. You sound very certain. I am. Because I've watched you do the impossible for 9 months straight. Why would you stop now? She managed a smile. Stubbornness? Exactly. Your greatest quality. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the library quiet around them. Outside, the kingdom settled into evening routine. Guards changing shifts, merchants closing shops, families gathering for dinner in homes that were marginally warmer, marginally safer, marginally better than they'd been a year ago. Small changes. But changes. Tell me something, Kael said eventually. When you took the crown from Varric that night, did you think you'd survive? No, I thought I'd die either way. At least this way, I'd die for something real. Would you do it again, knowing everything that came after? She thought about the pain, the fear, the constant pressure of judgment, thought about the wound that still ached, the nobles who still hated her, the impossible weight of being a symbol. Then she thought about Elena's tears of gratitude, about the welfare reforms feeding families, about standing beside Kael and facing down Lord Ferris, about being seen, being heard, being valued. Yes, she said, I'd do it again, every time. The summer brought news from the border kingdoms. Word had spread about Thornvale's servant queen, about the reforms, about common people gaining voice and power. Other kingdoms watched nervously, some with interest, others with suspicion. An envoy arrived from the Southern Reach, a merchant republic that had always viewed monarchy with skepticism. Their representative, a sharp woman named Thera, requested audience with Leora specifically. We've heard interesting things about your kingdom, Thera said over dinner. A queen who rose from nothing. Laws changed to protect common people. Nobles held accountable. We're trying, Leora said carefully. It's not perfect. Nothing is, but it's unusual. Most kingdoms talk about serving the people. Yours actually does it. Thera set down her glass. We'd like to establish formal trade relations. Not with Thornvale's nobility. With you, directly. Kale raised an eyebrow. That's not standard protocol. We're not interested in standard protocol. We're interested in partnership with someone who understands what it means to work for a living. Thera smiled at Lyora. Someone who won't try to exploit our merchants because they're not nobility. You want to bypass the noble trade houses, Lyora said. We want fair trade. Your nobles don't understand fair. You do. It was a risk. It would anger the merchant nobles, disrupt established power structures. It would also open new revenue streams, strengthen the kingdom's economy, prove that common leadership could succeed where traditional nobility failed. Lyora looked at Kael. He nodded slightly. We accept, Lyora said, but I want full transparency. No hidden tariffs, no exploitative terms. Fair for both sides. Agreed. Thera extended her hand. Welcome to the future, Your Majesty. The trade agreement was signed a week later. The merchant nobles were furious, but they couldn't argue with results. The new routes brought revenue without their usual cut, which meant more gold for the kingdom's coffers and less for private hoarding. More changes rippled out. A neighboring kingdom, watching Thornvale's success, began implementing similar reforms. Another sent envoys to study the petition system. Slowly, impossibly, the servant queen became something larger than just Thornvale's story. She became a symbol of what was possible. Autumn came, bringing the first anniversary of the conspiracy's discovery. Kael organized a remembrance ceremony for those who'd died. The guards killed in the fighting, Martha murdered by Constance, others lost to the chaos. Lyora stood in the courtyard as names were read aloud. So many names, too many. We remember them, she said when the reading finished, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. We remember their sacrifice, and we honor them by building the kingdom they died protecting. A kingdom where common people matter, where justice isn't just for the powerful, where someone like me can stand here and speak these words. She paused, looking at the gathered faces, nobles and servants and merchants and guards, all mixed together in a way that would have been unthinkable a year ago. We're not finished. We'll never be finished. There's always more work, more corruption to root out, more people who need help. But we're better than we were, and we'll be better still tomorrow. She raised her voice. Because that's what they died for, not perfection, progress, and we owe them nothing less. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping, then another, then the whole courtyard erupted in applause, real, genuine, earned. Lyora felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, from the overwhelming weight of being seen, being heard, being valued for what she'd done instead of who she'd been born as. That night, lying in bed beside Kael, she said, I miss the kitchen sometimes. Really? Not the work, not the pain, but the simplicity. You knew what success looked like. Clean pots, good food, simple. You could go back, visit, cook something. I don't think I could. It wouldn't be the same. She turned to face him in the darkness. I'm not that person anymore. She's still in here somewhere, but she's not. I'm different now. Is that bad? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm wearing someone else's life, like I stole it and I'm waiting for someone to notice and take it back. You didn't steal it. You earned it. There's a difference. His hand found hers under the covers. And you're not going to lose it. Not to nobles, not to doubt, not to anything, because you're too stubborn to let go. She laughed softly. That's your answer to everything, stubbornness. It's worked so far. Fair point. Winter came again, completing the circle. 1 full year since Lyora had been dragged before the court, accused and condemned. 1 year since everything changed. The keep prepared for the anniversary with a celebration, not commanded by the crown, but organized by the common people themselves. They decorated the courtyard, prepared food, invited everyone regardless of status. Lyora watched the preparations from her study window, still amazed that this was real, that she was real, that any of it had worked. Kyle found her there as evening fell. They're waiting for you. I know, She shook her head. A year ago, I was nobody. Now they're throwing a festival in my honor. It doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. You gave them hope, gave them proof that change is possible. That's worth celebrating. I just did what anyone would do. No. You did what almost no one would do. You risked everything on truth when lying would have been safer. You stood up when staying down would have been easier. You changed the world because you refused to accept it the way it was. He took her hand. That's not anyone. That's you. They walked to the courtyard together. The crowd parted as they approached, not out of fear, but respect. Real respect, earned through action. A small platform had been built in the center. Leora climbed it carefully, her side still aching in the cold, and looked out at the assembled people. "Thank you," she said simply, "for giving me a chance, for trusting me, for believing that someone like me could stand here and make a difference." "You did make a difference," someone shouted. Others echoed it, voices rising. "I'm not finished," Leora said, smiling. "We're not finished. There's still so much work to do. But tonight—" She looked around at the decorations, the food, the people gathered without regard to status or birth. "Tonight, let's celebrate how far we've come. Tomorrow, we'll tackle how far we still need to go." The celebration lasted until dawn. Music and dancing and stories shared between people who'd never spoken to each other before. Nobles awkwardly attempting to dance with servants. Merchants sharing food with guards. Barriers dissolving, slowly but steadily. Leora danced with Kael, careful of her injury, laughing when they stumbled. Danced with Captain Rendall, who was surprisingly graceful. Danced with young Elena from the kitchens, who couldn't believe the queen remembered her name. As the sun rose, painting the courtyard gold, Leora stood at the edge of the celebration and watched. Watched nobles and commons laughing together. Watched children playing without understanding the significance of what their parents were witnessing. Watched the kingdom she'd almost died for celebrating the fact that they were still standing. "Worth it?" Kael asked, appearing beside her. "Every moment, every scar, every impossible choice." She leaned against him. "I'd do it all again." "You might have to. Change is never finished." "I know, but that's okay because I'm not alone anymore." "Never alone. You have me. You have them." He gestured to the crowd. "You have a kingdom that's better because you exist." She thought about that. Thought about 43 years of invisibility followed by 1 year of impossible transformation. Thought about every person who'd dismissed her, every noble who'd sneered, every moment she had doubted herself. Thought about how none of that mattered anymore because she'd proven, to herself more than anyone, that she was worth something, that she could change things, that being seen and being valued were possibilities, not fantasies. "You know what the best part is?" she said. "What? I'm not special, I'm not extraordinary, I'm just someone who refused to stay invisible." She turned to look at him, which means anyone can do it. Anyone can stand up, speak truth, change things. They just have to be brave enough to try. That's the lesson you want people to take from this? That they can do it too? That's the only lesson worth teaching. The celebration continued around them, but Leora felt a profound peace settle over her. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't, might never be. But because she'd taken the impossible journey from condemned servant to celebrated queen and survived. More than survived, thrived. And in doing so, she'd opened a door for everyone who came after. Shown them that birth didn't determine worth. That courage and truth could overcome corruption and power. That change was hard but possible. That being invisible didn't mean being worthless. She stood there in the rising sun, crown on her head, but scars on her body. Surrounded by people who'd once looked through her and now looked to her. And felt something she'd never felt before in 44 years of life. She felt proud. Not of being queen, that was just a title, but of becoming someone who mattered, someone who changed things, someone who refused to accept the world's judgment and wrote her own story instead. The kitchen servant who'd seen the truth when no one else would, who'd risked everything on being right, who'd survived judgment, betrayal, poison, and doubt to stand here now, who'd proven, against every odd, that one person could change everything. Kael wrapped his arm around her, and they watched the kingdom celebrate together. The kingdom they'd defended, reformed, and slowly, painfully, made better. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. There were still nobles who resented her, systems that needed fixing, people who needed help she couldn't reach. But it was better. Measurably, undeniably better. And that was enough. That was everything. "Your Majesty," someone called, young Elena approaching nervously. "Will you dance once more?" Before the celebration ends? Leora looked at Kael. He smiled, nodded. I'd be honored, Leora said. She took Elena's hand, kitchen servant to kitchen servant, past to present, invisible to seen, and danced in the morning light while the kingdom watched and cheered. And in that moment, as the sun climbed higher and the last stars faded, Leora Vance understood something profound. She hadn't just saved the kingdom that frozen night when she'd taken the crown. She'd saved herself. Not from death, though she'd done that too, but from the slow death of being unseen, unheard, unvalued, from accepting invisibility as her permanent state, from believing the world's judgment about who she was allowed to be. She'd taken the impossible risk, survived the unsurvivable, and become someone who mattered. Not because a crown said so, because her actions proved it. The dance ended. The celebration began winding down as people drifted home, exhausted but happy. Leora stood with Kael in the emptying courtyard, watching the kingdom wake to another day. Ready? He asked. For what? For whatever comes next. There's always something. She thought about it. Thought about the challenges still waiting, the nobles still plotting, the system still broken. Thought about the endless work of making things better. Then she thought about Elena's grateful tears, about common people dancing with nobles, about a kingdom that was learning slowly to value people instead of pedigree. I'm ready, she said. And she was, because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Change wasn't easy, wasn't clean, wasn't guaranteed. But it was possible. One person, one choice, one impossible moment of courage at a time. The crown thief had become the crown keeper. The invisible servant had become the visible queen. The nobody had become somebody who changed everything. And the kingdom would never be the same. Neither would she. And that was exactly as it should be.